Welcome back to the Travi Wavi. I'm your affable host, Travis Eason, and we are coming to you live once again from the 325 in the beautiful, historic downtown Abilene, Texas, the storybook capital of America. And today I've got a very special guest that you guys might recognize. He's been on the channel a couple times, helped me get this thing going, but we're going to bring back D. Grant on today and talk about his book again and book signing that you have coming up next month. But, before we get into that, D, I want to tell you a quick little story. You know my son, and he's a musician. Well, he's been playing some shows lately, and after one of these shows, somebody came up to him and said, hey, I got kind of a weird question for you, but I really like your style, your music. Listen, we had a homeless person pass, and we're going to bury him tomorrow, and in this, we're going to bury him the next day, and would you mind coming out? He doesn't have any family or any friends. Would you mind coming out with your guitar and just like playing over his gravesite?
Wow.
And so, TJ's like, sure, yeah, I mean, I've never done that before. It sounds cool, whatever. So he gets the address, whatever. So next day he's driving out there and kind of gets lost, can't quite find his way there, but shows up and he gets there about an hour late. And when he gets there, they've already kind of got this guy in the ground. There's a couple workers standing around with shovels. They've kind of finished the job. But he thinks, I feel like I need to do this anyway. So he walks up, gets his guitar out, just starts playing some songs, and really starts feeling this moment. And the workers are watching too, and they're kind of getting into it. And, he just plays a couple songs, and he's feeling moved, and he's starting to cry, and finishes with Amazing Grace. And all these guys are just bawling. These workers are it's just a very powerful moment. So Teach heads back to his car. He's done, and one of the workers comes up and says, "Hey, we just really wanted to thank you. We've never had anyone come out and do that for one of our septic system installs before." Okay, so there's a little brevity for the day.
That was.
We're gonna try to work in some of these. We can try to work in some of these monologues here in the beginning and see if we can't get a laugh.
I'm noticing, Travis, that, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
You have a very beautiful left hook comedic style. That's like a left hook from a one-armed right-handed man.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, I have to be honest, I did kind of steal that, but I just made it my own, but I mean, it's good stuff. Anyway, all right, we live in the storybook capital of America. We know that Abilene is full of artists, entrepreneurs, authors, critics, amazing people, and you are one of these amazing storybook characters, in my opinion.
Thank you.
And currently you're walking down this path of author. Would you put other hats on besides author right now? I mean, a spiritual advisor, friend, lover.
That I'm doing professionally, no. No, other hats would be personal growth, spiritual development, and business development, all from a framework around storytelling.
Very good.
So everything about our lives is a story that we're telling ourselves about who we are, about who other people are, about how life works, about who and what God is. And then we're doing the same thing with business, but we have often a hard time understanding ourselves. And we also seem to have a hard time expressing ourselves and owning our voice and articulating what it is that we really want to say. Because there's a lot of, we've talked about this, there's a lot of polarization. There's a lot of fear around if I say what I really feel, if I really express myself, I'm going to either be rejected, not accepted, cast out, pinned into a corner, or ridiculed, or whatever, or blacklisted, or cancel culture, whatever you want to call it. And so there's a lot of very well-meaning, big-hearted people that have a hard time accepting themselves, understanding who they really are, and expressing themselves. And I think that's true in business. And so I've extended my I guess, way of helping people feel safe, understanding themselves, and expressing themselves into both a personal development and a business development standpoint.
And you've been on this journey now for a number of years.
Quite a few. It's actually interesting. One of my first coaches is a guy named Steve Palfreman. I love Steve. He's like a brother to me. I started working with him in 2014 when I was beginning my entrepreneurial journey after working for KECU for 13 years. and I was still doing the appetizer,
Mhm,
which
mhm,
you were a big fan of.
mhm,
And so I was trying to figure out how to build the show out, and I reconnected with Steve a couple years ago when I launched my growth farming
mhm,
platform, and he helped me really build the platform out, put some infrastructure in place. But when I was trying to figure out how to incorporate storytelling that I was doing with coaching and a personal development standpoint, and then I guess a little bit of marketing work, he's like, "Well, dude, you've always been a storyteller.
mm,
Since the first conversation we had, I knew that about you." And I'm like, "What? That was a radio show." "No, dude, you were a storyteller.
mm,
You were telling the story that these artists were trying to tell.
mhm.
You were curating their music. You would take 2 songs from an album." And I'm like, "You remember all this stuff?" He's like, "Dude, nobody did what you
Yeah,
did."
it was pretty cool.
And I was so honored by his memory
Mm,
of my work. But as he was sharing that with me, I began to see my own journey more clearly.
mm,
And so that is actually a big part of what I do too, is helping people see themselves and their journey more clearly. So that's really what this book is about.
mhm,
Like I started writing short stories in 2019, 2020, and at some point I felt like I was channeling these stories from God, from a higher power. And as I would read them to people, the feedback I was getting, I wasn't reading them for feedback. I was reading
mhm.
them because I wanted to share.
Yeah.
Um, but the feedback was like, dude, I see myself and my journey more clearly.
Mm,
And I understand like, these are beautiful stories. When can I read this in a book that I can turn the pages of? It's not just, words on a screen.
mhm,
And I was like, well, that's a great question. I knew from my Be Solid days that like I had to send it off to a publisher, go through this deep revision process. I didn't want to necessarily have to do all that again.
hmm.
I did do that in a way, but it wasn't as in depth.
Yeah.
But there's 13 stories in this book out of 50 something that I wrote. I'm going to be releasing more anthologies over the next couple of years, but beginning to end, each story builds into the next one, not from the same characters,
Mhm,
because you know that from reading it.
mhm,
There are different characters, there are different subjects, there are different worlds but the overarching theme is one place to the next place to the next place, but it's about going within yourself. And Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within.
mm,
And I never understood that in church. I've understood that going on a spiritual path of actually walking with God and having a lot of conversations and feeling into my body and experiencing things within myself and realizing that that's what my stories are actually about.
mm,
It's leading you into a journey of your own heart and your own soul to rediscover yourself and finding God within you and having that experience that only you can have with God within yourself.
mm.
And the last thing I'll say about this is Bruce Lee said this great quote that I always hearken back to. He said, "It's not my job to tell you what the truth is. It's my job to point you towards the truth and let you discover the truth in your own journey." And so that's what I do with my storytelling and my work.
So that brings to mind a couple things. Before the show, we were talking about some things, and I brought up that article that my girlfriend sent me
Mm-hmm.
about Eastern versus Western
Mm-hmm.
sort of thought and spirituality, and that was sort of another thing that article brought up was. Oh, I'm drawing a blank now. D, you just said it. Oh,
Curiosity and asking
no,
questions.
totally having a brain fart right now. It's okay. Not enough coffee. By the way, if you want some great coffee, come on down to Majestic Coffee Shop next door downtown Abilene, Texas. They're serving Onyx coffee and have since day one. It's delicious. Yeah, I totally lost my train of thought on that one. That's good. It's the first time that's happened on the show. It was really good thought too. Whatever. So as you're, external versus internal. That's where I was going with that. That in the Western theology traditions, we try to find that answer, that truth, or whatever outside of us.
Mm-hmm.
In the Eastern traditions, we just know that it's already internal, and we need to work and find our way through that.
Mm-hmm.
Also, watched an interesting thing about a gentleman who was trying to learn like Japanese woodworking, I believe, and as an adult and a Westerner, and when he was accepted into this woodworking shop, the master told him, "We work in silence. If you have a question, you can ask me during the break."
Mm.
And it was very much about just watching, right? Watching, and learning by watching. And then, also thinking about like child rearing, how important it
Mm.
is that we are the example with our children. They don't listen to what we tell them to do, generally speaking. I mean, they might, but more often than not, our children or we watched our parents. We didn't may not have listened to them, but we observed and watched and absorbed by what they did. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think that's kind of saying and tying into some of these same things that you're talking about with this book, because it's that in your journey, it's that there's not an external solution. There's not someone's not going to come up to us and tell us the truth, but we have to continue to go on our walk and explore, and maybe there's something external that pushes us, but it's going to push us to maybe seek a little bit more internally for that truth.
Yeah, and challenge our ideals,
Mm.
challenge our beliefs. It's interesting, like for me in my own spiritual journey, like God challenges my beliefs a lot
Mm.
because, like we were talking about earlier, I spent a long time thinking that I knew everything,
Mm.
and I made it like a point to try to have answers, and thought that that was what life was about.
Mm-hmm.
And also, honestly, I had found great value at one point in my life as being an answer person,
Mm.
as somebody that read a lot of books and knew a lot of things. And
Go ask D. Grant. He'll know. Yep.
but Trevor Hall, one of my favorite people in the whole world. One of his songs is, I think, is called "What I Know,"
Mm.
and the lyrics are this: "What I know is that I don't know,
Yeah.
and I dance and I sing and I live full." And learning, the more that I walk with life, the more that I walk with God, the more that I experience people, the more I realize that there's so much I don't know,
Mm.
and I've got to get out of my own way.
Mm-hmm.
And so changing our mind is really important because our mind can influence our feeling states,
Mm-hmm.
it can influence our consciousness. But what you said about the woodworking training being in silence,
Mm-hmm.
dude, honestly, where I've been led to a lot recently in my journey is I spend a considerable amount of time in the mornings in total silence, and I spend average amount of time in the afternoon in total silence.
Mm.
And I'm getting to a place where I'm not watching much TV.
Mm-hmm.
I've My girlfriend has moved me into a place where I'm not on her influence over my life, and I'm not I'm not on social media very much.
Good.
And actually, enjoying not
Mm-hmm.
being there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, which isn't to say, wait, but D, I saw you post something on Instagram. You're right. I posted about this event that I'm going to be doing July 13th on Sunday, July 13th from 4 to 5 p.m. at 7 and 1 Books, right around the corner
Just
here.
down the street.
I will be reading part of my book, and I will be signing. And you can buy books at the store in person. We can have a conversation about it. And I'm basically telling people about that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm I'm spending more time being quiet, listening to God within me, and also being more present in my relationships. And
Mm.
I'm learning that so much of our lives, like, I don't know if you know this, there was a period of time about 5 years ago where the human attention span was 8.5 seconds.
Hmm.
A goldfish attention span is 7 seconds. So we
Comparable.
we were slightly better.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're about 4.5 to 5 seconds
I believe it.
attention span.
I believe it.
And we can blame TikTok
Mm-hmm.
or Instagram or Facebook or anything, but it doesn't matter where the blame goes. We're still the people that get to decide if we let that keep going.
Yeah.
And I want my focus time, my ability to engage with another human being and another human soul, my ability to connect with myself and not get distracted,
Mm.
my ability to connect with my partner and not be distracted, my ability to connect with God and not be distracted,
Mm.
to not be 5.5 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. I read an article or skimmed an article this morning about how Chat GPT is starting to do some research on this. It's homogenizing the minds, our minds. So basically, because you know most students and teachers and administrators are using these chat GPT functions, these AI functions, these large language model situations, that our ability to think critically and creatively has dropped significantly,
Really?
and our ability to recognize it has dropped significantly. And that's just like in this last 6 months to a year and a half. I mean, most people haven't even started to mess with chat GPT very much, and it's been interesting sitting on the back deck with my son in the afternoons, chit-chatting and looking at various things on social media and saying, do you think this is real? And like, and some of it's getting harder and harder to tell. It really is, but it's still fake, but it's passed as truth, right? A lot of different, whatever the subject is, whatever the thing is. So we're living in really interesting times where our attention span is dropping, where our ability to think critically is falling away if we ever had it to begin with, and our ability to be creative on our own without prompting is also becoming it's vanishing. And this is this, I think this is another reason why we need to keep doing the Travi Wavi and have these a little bit longer format session, 50-minute to an hour conversations with one person. There's not producer extraordinaire Sam Wolf does a great job adding some visuals and graphics on the programming, but again, I mean, it's almost like we need that now to stay engaged a little bit more as audience members. It's interesting. It's wild. So how do we, is there a solution to this besides unplugging and picking up a book and reading?
I think it's interesting that you're asking a former answer person a question about
what do you
answers.
think about that? I mean, I don't expect you to have the answer, but I'd love to hear your opinion.
I don't think that there is an answer. I am not anti-AI. I don't know if I'm necessarily... I embrace it. Like, I use ChatGPT, but I have conversations with ChatGPT. So for me, in a way, it can be a vehicle for improving communication. It can be a vehicle for improving understanding. It can be a great way to learn about things that you don't know and have it explained and simplified in an easier, more condensed manner than trying to read an entire book on a subject. But we have to get better at asking better questions.
I agree with that.
And I think, like, I did a workshop. I've got a friend of mine, his name's Ray Gage. He's a best-selling leadership coach. But he's got a great book called Start with Stop. And the whole book, each chapter is one specific subject about leadership. And he's a no-fluff dude. And but he's an incredibly kind, open-hearted, like, spiritually wise and brilliant human being. But we both had this thing where we were doing in the workshop where we recognized that sometimes people have a hard time asking questions in general because we're not taught to ask questions. We're taught to find answers. And those can seem to contradict each other. So, and we can get frustrated with the process of trying to find answers if we can't find answers. When it turns out that one of my favorite teachers is a guy named Rob Bell.
Rob Bell, yep.
In the evangelical world, a lot of people know who he is. He's a guy that got blacklisted by a lot of evangelicals because he wrote this really powerful and profound book that basically said that the idea of an external hell that an all-loving God would send anything or anyone to is absolute rubbish and not in Scripture. And of course, because so much of the Christian theology
don't like that.
is built around, well, I need to have church because that saves me from hell.
Yep.
Whether or not it's true doesn't, but Rob Bell, read any of his books. His earliest work, Velvet Elvis, I think, I don't know what his, he's got an introduction to the Bible, I think is probably his most recent one. It's chock full of questions. And he's so much about, like, and I'm influenced by this quest to ask more and better and deeper questions. And the more that I study and the more that I grow and the more that I spend time, what you do here on this show, you're asking questions. How can you learn anything without asking questions?
Exactly.
And what I share with you isn't the definitive answer. It can't be. Because there's going to be a tomorrow. Even if we are able to find any sort of definitive answer, which I'm immediately brought to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I almost said Guardians of the Galaxy. That's not
Yeah,
correct.
Hitchhiker's Guide.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, when they ask the all Trinity thing, and they get a whole year to figure out what the answer to everything is, and it turns out to be 42.
42.
42 is a great year for me.
Good.
However, 43 continues to go on. 44 is going to get here pretty soon, and I still have questions.
Yep. And I think that's good. I think it's good to stay in that sort of place of somewhat uncertainty. You know, like we still have to move forward with some sort of confidence, or at least, moving forward is a positive thing. Sitting still is a positive thing. I'm not trying to. I think cover this.
You're bringing something up that's really important.
Okay.
Because what you're talking about earlier about the difference between Eastern ideology and methodology and understanding and learning and all that stuff versus Western. Western, we have to know the answer.
Yeah.
We can't sit in uncertainty. We feel very uncomfortable, and we get really anxious and agitated and violent when there's not a sense of, I know exactly what's going to happen and everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And Easterners more so are like, chaos is a part of life. There is some structure in all of chaos, and we have to embrace the idea that there's going to be things that we don't know, we can't figure out, and we have to find peace within that and allow us to be at peace within that, or no external peace is going to be able to provide that for us.
Sort of like the journey of 10,000 steps starts with one, in a way. You may not know what the outcome is supposed to be like. You might have an idea. You'd like to get to that mountaintop, etc., but you won't get there by thinking your way there, or talking to people that have been there, reading about, looking at pictures of it. I mean, all those things can be helpful, but you're not actually going to get to the summit unless you start walking. Yeah.
There's a story inside the Resplendent Window called The Saturn of Utopia. I don't know if you've read it yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
I'm about maybe 3 stories in.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
this is middle of the way.
Okay.
In Saturn of Utopia, there's only 3 characters in the whole story. And I kind of have that pattern. I don't have a whole lot of characters in most of my stories. There's one that's got about, I think, 12 people in it total. But in the Saturn of Utopia, the main character is a guy named Walter. He's a scientist. And he finds this way. Actually, first he finds this planet in a distant universe that emits an energy frequency, a Hertz frequency, that's synonymous with peace and abundance. The entire planet does. And he's like, well, if the entire planet is emitting this energy frequency, they must not have disease, they must not have poverty, they must not have war. I've got to go find out what their secret is. And so he finds a way to contact somebody there. He creates this portal, transforms and transfers himself to this other world, and meets this lady named Bella. And Bella starts showing him around the planet, starts showing him around the area. And he has all these questions at first. And she's so open to his questions at first because he's a curious person and she's a curious person and she loves learning. But when he starts asking her questions about money, about business, and about how she's able to have this very large home, gardens and all this stuff, she starts to kind of back up and she's like, I can't answer that question because your cells are changing. Your body chemistry is different when you're asking me these questions. And he's like, my body chemistry is different. You can see my cells? What's going on? And she's like, there was a different energy that came out of you when you started asking me this question about money. I don't even know what that is. You keep asking me what my business is. What is that? We're speaking the same words. I kind of understand what some of these things mean, but because your energy's different, I can't understand what you're asking me. And it poses this way of looking at ourselves that because of our belief systems and because of the ways that we view life, the ways that we view money, the ways that we view opportunity, the ways that we view provision and abundance, because if we shrink back and have a closed-minded or lack scarcity mindset around that because we have to find the answer for it. And the answer is going to make all this stuff possible. We're actually closing ourselves off from being able to receive that which we want. And it's not until Walter is willing to let his old consciousness go. He quotes Einstein, and she quotes Einstein. Or no, there's another character named Trevor that quotes Einstein. But the quote is this: you'll never find a solution to a problem with the same level of consciousness that created it.
That's profound, huh? Yeah, I mean, when we allow our minds to, when we start to believe some of the thoughts that we have about ourselves that are, critical, negative, lack, disgust, shame, fear, onwards and onwards, and it's easy. I mean, it's still Men's Mental Health Month. This is a good subject to have. It's easy to stay in that sometimes, especially if you're hungry, tired, worn out. If you're already feeling broke, and you start thinking about how broke you are, you start feeling a little bit more broke. And you're right. You can't take a step in the right direction. You can't make any action forward from that place. And I've watched this with myself, with my family, with friends, but especially with my children. It's been interesting to watch this concept of like, okay, I want to get from where I am here, A, to B. So now I have to think through all the steps that it's going to take to get to B. And if I can't see a way from A to B in my mind, I may choose not to even try. But the beautiful part is you don't have to know. You don't have to see the whole arc. The idea, I think, and I mean, I'm not well practiced at this, but I continue to try at almost 47 years old. Take a step, move in the right direction, and then things do open up, and solutions do come. People come alongside. Provision happens at the right time. And if we'd waited for everything to work out before we started, we wouldn't get anywhere.
Yeah.
And so it really just is this idea about having the courage to take that first step. Might be uncomfortable, but baby steps.
And trusting that in each step is the right one you're supposed to be on. I think another big thing that gets in our way is this thought that, like, well, I've missed it.
Yeah.
And I'm not where I'm supposed to be. No, you're exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Even if you're in the last 2 years, there was a lot of failure that I experienced. A lot. You know some of it. Big stuff. Stuff that, like, I was convinced was going to be a certain way that didn't go that way at all.
Yep.
And I had told everybody that I knew, I know that this is the way it's going to be.
Yep.
I thought I had experienced something from God. I know that this is the way it's going to be.
Yep.
And then it wasn't. So the realization of that not coming into being, I can't tell you the kind of failure that felt like. And what that did to me from a self-esteem, confidence, inner gardener sort of standpoint, I felt like a fraud in a lot of ways. But I needed to have that experience. Turns out the higher version of me wanted to go through that. Wanted me to choose me at my worst, absolute lowest places in relationships, business, money, self-worth, calling, all of the things, feeling like, for me to choose me, not to get something from somebody else. When I wrote Be Solid after going through divorce, I can admit that there was a huge part of my early self-love practice that was about me loving myself so that I could be loved by somebody else. That was a subconscious and also a somewhat conscious part of my, like, I'm going to do these things. I'm going to choose to love myself so that somebody else will love me, because I can't get somebody else to love me unless I love myself. So if that answer seeking, that's the answer to this problem that I have, well, that's what I'm going to do. But then God is like, okay, well, what if I take that from you, though? Will you still choose you? You're going to say this affirmation over and over again, I am chosen, but are you going to choose you if you lose everything that you think is what makes you valuable? Because that's really where love is.
Yeah.
And if you don't stand to gain anything from anybody else, maybe you'll know what love actually means.
Yeah, it is. It's a difficult journey once you start to wake up and recognize that you're not in control,
Mm-hmm.
and that the little bit of control that you do have is really just about turning inward a little bit,
A lot.
and you have some control over your mind, but it takes practice
And discipline.
and discipline. I don't know that I have much control over my heart ever, but I'm an emotional being. I kind of float through it, and I have to. But I listen to it,
Uh-huh.
and somehow my tummy and my heart and my mind sometimes work together.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Well,
we're a whole lot more than just our jobs or our bodies or where we live or what we think. I mean, we're souls having a human experience.
so yeah, my partner, my beloved, every day this week she has reminded me, she's like, you go to bed, you're a child of God.
Mm.
You wake up, you're a child of God. That's who you are. There are things that you do,
Mm-hmm.
but your job title or work
Mm-hmm.
or lack of or dreams and ambitions or relationships or roles, all those things are part of your life, but that's not who you are at your core. At your core, this is who you are.
Mm.
And it's like, wow, even I, as enlightened as I think I am sometimes, had gotten away from that.
Mm.
And what that also tells me is I don't have to have answers.
Yeah.
There's a huge trust factor in this thing we call life
Mm-hmm.
that I was telling Travis right before we started, I can't remember the guy's name. I think it's David something. But there's I guess he's a rabbi now or minister of some sort, but he had like multiple doctorates in theology, and he went and spent time in Israel and very quickly learned that he didn't really know anything, that his school knowledge was not really all that valuable, and that the lowest level student of the, Bible 101 class that he was in this rabbinical school, like actually knew way more stuff than he did. And it was this reminder that like it doesn't matter how much you learn, you're always going to have something more to enlighten yourself with.
Mm-hmm.
And that there really are no such things as experts. I mean, we have expertise in things, but that doesn't mean that anybody knows everything about anything.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I think I came to that realization. I have a funny story about that. So many years ago, when I was still living in Sioux Falls, I started going to horticulture school, and was taking an arborist class, woody plants and trees, shrubs. Okay, great class, hard. We had to learn like the Latin name for everything, and the teacher was great, but she was a stickler on it. But it was super great. We went to the park all the time and identified trees by, it was fun. Well, I moved to Abilene a few years later, and I took the Master Gardener class. It met some great people. And one of the things I enjoyed about that, I think we met once a week maybe, and we'd have different experts come in different fields, and we had an arborist come in. And he was talking about the pecan tree, which is common around here. We love our pecan trees. And I almost had the Latin name on the tip of my tongue, but then it went away. Anyway, no, that's oak. Anyway, so we're sitting there in the class, and he's talking about the pecan tree and how easy it is to transplant because it has a big taproot or one main root that goes down. Well, up in South Dakota, when I took woody plants and shrubs, our professor, who was an expert, an arborist, said that the pecan tree is very difficult to transplant because it has a single taproot. Now, we don't have that many pecans up there either. It's not really the zone for it. So I got, hey, I have a question. These aren't aligning for me. Which is it? And I think a lot of times, a lot of the truths that we think we know to be true maybe aren't, because we're in a different place with different people. Right? Like we're in a different zone. And so we may not have as much familiarity with that. And what may be true for one group or one people may not be true for another group or another people.
Have you experienced where something that you did when you were younger that worked all the time, you try it again now at, 20 years later, and you're like, this used to be easy and this used to be natural. Like if I wanted this to happen, I would do this one thing and bam, it would happen. And now I do it and it does nothing. What the crap?
I mean, I don't know if I can relate to that, D. Grant, very well. Except, I mean, I know I was a bit of a spoiled brat as a young person, and that doesn't work anymore because there's no one to take care of me but me.
Well, okay.
You know, so
well, there you go.
There's that. You know, there's not mom and dad or anybody else to take care of my needs when I'm 2, 3-year-old throwing a temper tantrum. That doesn't work very well.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So that state of consciousness that you had those years ago, that soil that you were in, that worked. But you moved to Sioux Falls with your pecans, and that doesn't grow right.
It doesn't grow. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so if it's okay with you, we're gonna do a couple things. We're gonna shift subjects a little bit, tie up some things. But before we do that, Sam, are you back there? Do you have any questions for D. Grant today? No questions at all? All right, that's okay.
Have I enlightened you so much that you have nothing you'd like to ask?
You want me to answer that honestly?
Yes, I do.
No. It's been a very dull conversation. A lot of statements about asking questions.
That's good. It's good.
On that subject,
Yeah.
you bring up a really great point. Subjects about asking questions. If we are not in conversations with people where we are asking questions that are not surface level, where we're not talking about base level what happened in the news, or what political person said this that pissed everybody off, or what sports person did this to, ruin their family or friends, or, basically if we're not having conversations built around your average copy of People magazine or tabloids or whatever, then we don't know how to explore things that are actually significant and build really truly meaningful relationships with each other.
Well, I think sometimes we need an example of what it's like to go a little bit deep and a little bit broad sometimes, and to our conversation today may not be like you say, like cutting edge cultural topics or pop cultural topics, but this is a place that you and I like to go. We like to ask some of these questions of each other and think a little bit deeper. And again, maybe there is somebody that will watch this today or in a week or in a year and say, hey, those are two dudes that were able to have kind of an interesting, deep, rational, maybe not even rational conversation. And I'd like to try to do that also.
I'm just saying that to say that, like, it's always a good time to practice. And we practice asking better questions by just being a little bit more curious. And curiosity is actually one of the greatest gifts you can give to yourself and give to somebody else.
I like that. I think curiosity has a lot to do with imagination. And imagination is a muscle that I need to continue to flex and practice and also encourage others to do. I think imagination is one of the bulwarks that we have against the oncoming homogenization of artificial intelligence, trying to get us all to kind of think the same way, talk about the same things. And that's a washing of humanity and culture that I want to stand up against all that for sure. So at least to be another point on the map, something. So on some of that, let's see. Real quick, D. Grant, what's your day like on a given day? You've got some practices that you like to do that are helpful.
I've moved away from waking up to an alarm clock.
Cool.
But that also means that God likes to wake me up really early, which I resisted for a long time. But lately, I spend a little bit of time in the morning just laying and being still and asking questions. And then I spend time with my partner, and then I spend time in silence, have breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
Usually try to go for a walk in the morning before.
What's your breakfast consist of?
Oh, dude. Here's another shift. I'm reading the back of ingredients
Mm-hmm.
in the grocery store. You guys might or might not know this. If it says it has natural flavors in the ingredients, it's rubbish. Literally.
Hmm.
It's some of the most non-natural, like toxic crap you can put into your system.
Terrible.
So, to answer your question, for breakfast I eat oatmeal that is oatmeal.
Mm-hmm.
And then I add frozen fruit and nut butter, not peanut butter. Nut butter. It's got almonds and sesame seeds and pistachio, and it's got all these great nuts, seed butter stuff in it. And top it with a little cinnamon, and it's incredibly nutritious and awesome.
And that gets you going for the day.
Yeah,
It's good. It's good.
with some hot tea. And yes, I drink hot tea in the summertime.
Good for you. You know, 2016, I think we went to Bonnaroo
Yes.
together. And
Still have the shirt.
good. And I don't know if you've been following any of the drama at Bonnaroo this year, but it got rained out. It's like only the third time in 25 years that it's ever gotten rained out.
We
Friday
were at
they
the only
canceled.
show where they kicked everybody out
For
right
Thunderstorm.
before the main event, headline event on Saturday night, only to bring us back 2 hours later. I'm so glad that happened.
Yeah.
We would have gotten drowned
We would've
by
gotten
people.
drowned. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, just thought I'd bring that up since we had that shared memory of Bonnaroo, and interesting though about that, they refunded everybody's tickets 75%. So Bonnaroo ate the cost of the festival this year. That's impressive. That's not something you see corporate do all the time.
That's pretty trippy.
Yeah. Yeah.
75%.
Well, I mean, I think they canceled it Friday, so you got Thursday. I mean, if you went, you probably were out some money, because
You drive across the
you drive
country.
across the country, you take all your camping gear and food, and
They've
what-
upped certain refunds to 100%.
they did. That's good.
Yep,
That's good.
for certain ones.
So anyway, I was happy to hear that about Bonnaroo, and I'd like to go again at some point. Take the kids, take my grown adult kids now. That'd be cool. A question that I've kind of been asking people around town is, are you noticing the impact of this Lancium Stargate development north of town? We talk about it almost every show, but are you seeing any economic impacts? Are you seeing, evidence of that?
Honestly, I don't pay much attention to those things.
Okay.
For me, I think this is true about the news and about social media. It's one thing to repeat, and this kind of goes back to the belief systems and like our cultural differences, East versus West. If what I think is true is based on something that I read in a social media article or post, or something that some influencer, and I'm putting that in finger quotes because whatever that means, somebody that has whatever number of people that are following them, because they said that makes it true. If that's the case, that's one thing. And opinion becomes factual in a way if you get enough people to believe it to be true.
Sure.
Public perception, collective consciousness, all that stuff. But there's something else there's always pockets and nuances inside everything. And so I'm going to reference in the early 1930s when the Great Depression was happening, and 85% of the country was starving. There were 15% of people that actually did pretty good. And within that 15%, there was like a 5% of people that like made out like barons. Now, what did they do that was so different than the rest of people? I don't have answers to all those questions, but I know that they weren't doing the same sorts of things, listening to the same sorts of people, tapped into the same kinds of like information that the 75 to 85% of people that were struggling and starving were. And there's a huge thing about like garbage in, garbage out. What we put into ourselves it has an effect on what comes out of us. And so I don't know about the effects of the star thing. I know that it was what, a $500 billion
$1 billion
thing.
project.
And we're not in control of how things go. Every politician, since there's ever been a politician, going back to, pre-Jesus times, everybody that's ever been elected or positioned as king that has tried to implement their rule, and I'm going to do this thing to get this result, the success rate on that is probably not above 25%. So every 4 years in this country, we have a whole group of people that make a bunch of really big promises to us about how they're going to save us from the doldrums and the terrible things that the previous administration has done. And every year, there's a percentage of people that believe that 1,000%, and there's another group of people that believe that that's never going to happen. And then there's everybody else in the middle that's like, well, just wait and see. Well, we as a country have been kind of going back and forth in the wait and see for a whole long time. Because not to say that the things don't work, but we don't know when they're going to work because you can't put a timetable on that. Maybe the $500 billion thing turns into a $15 trillion deal in 10 years.
Yeah,
If we say that it's a total failure now, maybe it is right now. And maybe it's supposed to be because that's just the way that it works.
Well, I guess the reason I'm asking this question is because as I maneuver around town in various capacities, I'm asking questions like, I personally know a couple people now that are working out there in various ways. But like I check in with my gas station attendants because I live on the north side. Like, are you seeing any traffic? I've noticed that all the hotels on I-20 are full up, and they're full up for a year now. Ben sent Sam and I an article this morning from Big Country homepage about lease, like available units for rent and lease in town are it's dry. Like nothing's really available. I'm going to do a project for a friend who just bought a house that the entire intention is to rent it out to construction workers for the next few years. As this construction project booms, Kiwanis, I think in this article, Kiwanis is mentioned as saying that Lancium is intending to take, we've got 3,200 people working out at that facility right now, building, mostly in construction capacities, and that by the end of July it'll be 6,000 workers. That's a doubling in that workforce. This article also quotes or mentions that currently the cost of living in Abilene, which used to be lower when we first moved here and started doing things, now is comparable to the Metroplex. That rents have gone from about $1,200 to $1,600 to $2,200 for single unit apartments.
Wow.
So my question, and I don't expect you to have an answer, but a question that I would ask about this is when, maybe it's 5 years or maybe it's 10 years when the construction process winds down and these workers move on to the next opportunity. Will our rates stay high?
Probably. Also, remember fracking?
Yeah.
In the early 2000s?
Yeah.
Remember how that turned Midland, Odessa into what it turned Midland, Odessa into?
Like a boom town.
Yeah.
Again.
And then when the oil crisis happened, after the, I forget what it was, that tanker that spilled in the formerly known as Gulf of Mexico. And then
the BP. That was a BP, yep.
And then
an oil a rig in the Gulf.
So then so much drilling and stuff got shut off, and stuff that was supposed to be like an alternative fuel thing, we couldn't do anything. There's so many pieces of moving things. That's the first thing that popped into my head, because there was a period of time where you couldn't get a hotel room in Midland, Odessa. Restaurants, you couldn't.
You still can't. Midland's still that way.
Still just booming.
Okay, so
People are demolishing homes that are unlivable to put a trailer home on.
okay, so I think that this impacts more than just our cost of living. It impacts more than just our perceived local economy booming. Now we've got 6,000 more people in a relatively small town. That's a significant increase of people. I would imagine that. I mean, I live outside of Abilene. That the county, Jones County, Callahan County, Shackelford County, some of these other counties and regions that are not used to having a lot of people, now they're going to see some increases because it's less expensive to live in those places, perceivably, until things go up there too. There's I think that leads to all kinds of questions to ask, and there's probably with that opportunities for us to help and serve those people that are not used to being around here, and that are maybe their plan is to be here for a handful of months until their construction project is done, and then they're going to move on. But maybe they, like us, fall in love with this place, and even though like our shelf life was supposed to be 4 years because we went to college here, like it's turned into 20 something.
Yep.
And so that creates other opportunities.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. For me, it is the most important sort of project that's happening in our. I mean, it's a big project that's happening. It's tied into, technically, it's tied into all of the geopolitical things that we're witnessing right now, with rare earth minerals and bombs being dropped, and the race for artificial intelligence, super artificial intelligence with China, and it's just this huge project is happening in our backyard, and so I don't know. I like to keep my finger on the pulse of it and watch and ask questions about it and see what other people are thinking, because it's happening and we're watching it. Well, we don't have any questions from our audience. We want to make sure that you guys come out. This is going to be Sunday the 13th of July, down the street at 7 and 1 Bookstore from at 4 o'clock?
4 to
6, 4 to 5. Yeah. Come on down, grab yourself a copy of the book. It's a really good book. I have not finished it, but I've started. It's in my truck, so it's like my truck reading book.
So what's one of your key takeaways that you've gained so far?
Oh, that's a hard question for me to answer. When I read your work, it's very sort of insightful, and it feels cozy to me in a way. Like, I don't know, like maybe in my spirit or something. Like I can kind of like sit into it, and so I don't know that if I have a real takeaway from what I've read yet. Except to say, I like the size of the print as I'm getting older. It's got a nice print size.
Here's the thing. I am self-published. I intentionally made the print size, I think, 14, because I clearly wear glasses, but I don't like squinting to read anything.
Yeah.
And HarperCollins, Doubleday, Penguin, all the major publishers print at like somewhere between an 8 and a 10 point font, and that's kind of, I think, standard. Also single space or half space. So there's some squinting that's taking place, and I don't want to feel like I'm as old as I am or old as I'm becoming. But it's not just older people that have been telling me that about the print size. They're like, dude, thank you for this.
It's a comfortable read. You know, like, can I say it like that? It's a comforting read and a comfortable read, and I think it's elegant. It's well put together. I'm excited to watch you continue on your journey, publishing more anthologies, and I don't know. I think you found a great little pocket for yourself as an author as well.
Thank you.
So anyway, not next Sunday, but in a couple Sundays, July 13th, 4 to 5 p.m., 7 and 1 Books, right there on
1138 North 2nd Street.
Yep, and that's a great little bookshop too. Come on down to historic downtown Abilene, the storybook capital of America. We've got so many great things to offer, restaurants and boutiques and coffee shops. I personally love my Onyx coffee from Majestic Coffee Shop. You like that plug, Sam? Sam Wolf, our producer extraordinaire, waking up early on Thursday mornings to help us put these together. The breakdown with Ben is going to be paused this week. He had some other things to take care of, but we'll be back next week with Big Frank and hopefully Meech again. So that's good. What else? What else do we need to cover today?
I'm curious, Trev.
Mm-hmm.
Do you talk at all about your artistic journey and your tattoo work?
Rarely. I do a little bit of mention here and there, but not a lot.
Why is that?
The show's less about me and more about highlighting the characters of the storybook capital of Texas.
Okay, well, since you are a key part of the storybook capital of Texas,
Thanks,
and
sir.
since from your work you are helping people tell aspects of their story in a graphic way that everybody can see, I think, from my personal perspective, that would be a wonderful way to incorporate something new into this show.
Well, I got one for you then. I'll tell you a
'Kay.
quick little story and then we'll sign off since we're at about an hour. I've tattooed for 15 years now. I really enjoy that. It's a wonderful part of my life and my career. What is today? Thursday. So Tuesday, I had a client come in. We'd already done some consultation work. I'm trying to decide how anonymous I want to keep this. Anyway, he's a local artist, wonderful musician, graphic artist. Has played in a lot of bands like the Earlies. He has another project called Mean, M-I-E-N.
Okay.
And they just returned from a little European 10-day, 2-week tour. They played 18 shows. He lost his puppy last year, little Jackson. So we did, and he came up with a wonderful, because he's a graphic designer, a great graphic for a tattoo. And I thought, oh, I can make that work. That'll work. We can make that work. So anyway, we did the tattoo on Tuesday. It's his first tattoo. And I think we honored Jackson. I think we did a good job on it. I like it. He liked it. And last night I was sitting with my son outside listening to music, and I was like, hey, I really haven't listened to this client's music. Let's get on. M-I-E-N, Mean. All right, so we start listening on Apple Music, I think, whatever. Good music, great music. If you need a good listen today, listen to some Mean. But just to tie this back to the AI thing, because I have to. My son's band, they use ChatGPT a lot to write bios, things like this nature, right? And it comes across like that to me. I can see it. It smells like AI. Looks
AI
like AI.
writes very the
So
same.
on Mean, on their Apple account, they've got the band bio, and you read through the band bio, and it's a great band bio, and clearly not written by AI, right? Clearly not. And I think, at least right now, as I kind of continue to pursue all of my artistic journeys and everything, I want to stay true to what's human. I don't need a computer to take away my creativity. I don't want it to. I want to be able to use a computer if it's serving me as a tool. I don't even like to design that much digitally. I like to use some things for reference, whatever, but I'm a hands-on guy. I want to print things off. I want to trace. I want to tear it apart. I want to do these sorts of things. I don't want a finished product to come from my screen. Because when it comes to, for instance, a tattoo or painting or a mural or a sculpture, none of that's digital. That's all real. It's tangible. A book is tangible. We might have this in a digital copy, right? But this is the physical copy.
By the way, none of that was written by AI.
Thank you for
promise.
clarifying. So, yeah, I mean, as I continue on my my journey, which I'm an artist, so part of that is this wrestling with what is art and meaning and culture and humanity, and then having this giant machine being built in my backyard that wants to steal some of that from me in a way. And maybe that's the wrong way to frame that, but it does very much feel like, I don't need you to take my job. Because otherwise I don't know what I'm going to do.
Well, so I
More
think
Travi Wavies.
I believe that we're moving into a place where I don't want to say that it's like the Terminator necessarily, but I believe that there will be more of a hunger for people to experience something that is authentically human and that connects with the soul, connects with the heart. AI, as great as it is, even when I've spent a lot of time with ChatGPT training it to do things and having deep conversations with it, but it communicates the same. And I don't want to say that I'm like a fluent AI. Like some people are fluent in French and German and Spanish, but it's fairly simple to see because it says a lot of the same things the same ways, and it likes to add little icons and emojis to all of its stuff as though that's the way that we talk. It's not. I believe that part of what we're going to shift into, and this is really good for those of us that are very big-hearted people, to recognize that if you consider yourself to be an empath, a highly sensitive person, a big-hearted person, a deep thinker, a deep feeler, your superpowers are going to be greatly needed and resourced in the very near future and the long-distance future, because there's nothing about that that's inside of any artificial anything. And so we as humans want to know that we matter with other humans, and you can't fake authentic.
I like that. You can't fake authentic. And that's why we do the Travi Wavi. I like it, to stay authentic. Keep making stew. All right, brother. Thanks for coming back on the channel again today.
Thank you for having me, man.
Of
It's always
course.
a
I'm glad that we
pleasure.
could do it. We've got some more good guests lined up for you guys throughout the summer. And we just really appreciate you watching. We are always here Thursday mornings if you want to come down and watch live. We are next door to Majestic Coffee Shop, where they serve Onyx coffee, some of the best in town. And watch some of the other videos on the Neon Parrot Live channel. Sam just had Pipe Dog on the other day. They did a live show. That was pretty great. Just a lot of good things. Breakdown with Ben. I think there's the standalone crow show. Open mic is always good. The singer-songwriters open mic Sunday nights is really incredible and a great way to watch some up-and-coming and new talent. All right, so guys, go support D. Grant, July 13th at 4 p.m. at 7 and 1, and come support local businesses downtown, including Majestic Coffee Shop. And we will catch you next week. Thank you for watching.